IMF broke all its rules by doing that program with Macri and by giving him an amount of money below the standards and the quotas and stuff. But now it's being pressured again by Trump to help Milei. Do you think Trump will do this? Do you think he will try to trick the IMF rules, or he will not in trying to show him also with austerity in his state?
So you see what the IMF has been doing, my country, your country, before Trump and Milei was exactly the same thing. It's extending and pretending, giving loans in order to allow the oligarchs in your country to get their money to convert it into dollars using the IMF dollars before, shutting the gates, and then everybody else will have to pay the price for that in devalued pesos. Right, so this is not new, and I think Trump is going to twist the arm of the IMF, but the IMF's arm has been twisted so many times by its own self that I have no sympathy for them. They keep complaining that they are being forced to violate their own rules. This is what they are doing now in Argentina. It's what they did here in Greece. They were telling me, Christine Lagarde, who was the managing director of the IMF, was almost weeping that, oh my God, the Europeans forced us to break our own rules. Well, nobody forced you to break your own rules. You're doing it willingly. This is your job. Your job is to operate like the sheriff of the oligarchs, who gets in there and essentially extracts surplus value and rents from the many, transfers them to the few, and then when the whole thing collapses, then blames the many.
And to what extent do you think that oligarchy and Trump and Elon Musk are going to support Milei as the leader of this hypocrite experiment, anti-state experiment, even though his his economic policy has nothing new and has nothing to offer in terms of results, in terms of growth, in investment? I mean, will they save him with money to maintain the symbol alive?
He's a useful idiot to Elon Musk and Donald Trump. They love him. You saw Elon Musk wielding the chainsaw and dancing along with Milei. They like to show in the United States, Trump, Musk, Peter Thiel, don't forget Peter Thiel, the Bezos, the Zuckerbergs, all. They like to have yes men leading governments of major countries like Argentina. They love it because they can tell their own base, look, our ideology is winning other people over as well.
That's what I'm asking, if they will pay for it.
However, when it comes to dollars and cents, these people, Trump and Musk and Bezos and the rest of them, will not give people like Milei not one penny. They will take, well, because they are in the business of accumulation. They are not interested in rewarding their slaves, in rewarding their stooges. They will treat their stooges with contempt. This is how, these emperors always were. Let's not forget that this is, one of the lessons of history, that the autocratic leaders of empires treat foreigners who lick their boots with the contempt that they deserve. They use them up, and then they spit them out. And the United States have done this so many times. Look, think of Noriega in Panama. He was a CIA asset, and the moment they didn't need him anymore, they chewed him up and spat him out. This is what they did with Saddam Hussein in Iraq. This is what they did with our dictators here in Greece in the 1960s and 70s. They use them, and then they discard them. This is what they will do. Because in any case, does Milei think he's going to avoid the tariffs of Donald Trump? There's no way he's going to avoid the tariffs of Donald Trump when it comes to soya beans, when it comes to whatever. Because this is the policy of Trump. He imposes tariffs on everyone across the board China, Germany, the Netherlands, Japan, and Argentina. And then he comes to a 1-1 negotiation with you and says, okay, so what are you going to give me if you want me to reduce the tariffs that I've slapped upon you? And then you have to give him. And you see what's happening with Ukraine. He says, oh, if you want us to even talk to you, you're going to give us half your land, you know, your rare earths, your whatever, your women, your children. And that's what they're going to do with Milei as well. And the fool doesn't even realize that. He thinks that they're his friends. They're not his friends. They look at him like a worm.
No tiene la mejor opinión del presidente Yanis Varoufakis, es cierto. Pero escuchá lo que opina sobre las criptomonedas en general, no sobre el escándalo de lo cual hablamos en otro tramo de la entrevista. In regard to cryptocurrencies especially, you wrote that it is inevitable that cryptocurrencies become almost pyramid scams, almost a Ponzi scheme, if they are successful. Why?
Well, let me begin by saying that when I first read the famous paper in, when was it, October, November 2008, that marked out the blockchain technology on which Bitcoin was based, I was mightily impressed. It is a remarkable piece of algorithm. It's incredibly clever. And I remember I was being interviewed by Wired magazine, the American computing science magazine, and I was asked what I thought of it. And I said, look, I can tell you this is not a sound foundation for a currency, for money, but it is very interesting, and it is a wonderful solution to a problem we have not discovered yet. But it is not the proper solution to money. And the reason is this, Alejandro. Take Bitcoin, which is the most successful and the most valuable of all those cryptos. Will it ever be money? Can it ever be money? We saw what happened in El Salvador. I mean, Bukele had to abandon it as a currency, essentially. He uses it for speculation. Suppose that people start using it, to buy hamburgers, to buy cars, to buy railway tickets, to buy whatever, in the daily life. So the demand for Bitcoin goes up and up and up. So which means that in terms of pesos, or in terms of euros, or in terms of yen, or in terms of dollars, its value goes up. But if that is the case, why would you want to spend it if you had some Bitcoins when you know that their price is going to go up? You would hoard it. So, and this is the delicious paradox. If it becomes successful, it will fail as a currency. If it becomes successful as a currency, then you will not use it as a currency. So it will fail. So success necessarily, no, everybody will hold it, hoping that its price will go up. Okay? Which means that it can never be, and it should never be, a currency. And another reason why it should never be a currency is because its supply is fixed. It is exogenous, as we say in economics, right? It is hardwired into the algorithm. The algorithm determines that there will be a maximum of 21 million Bitcoins, and most of them now have already been minted, and there's nothing you can do to adjust the quantity of Bitcoin, of money. But in the money that we use in our daily lives, in society, we need to be able to adjust the money supply. So think of what happened during the pandemic. During the pandemic, you had a collapse of economic activity because everybody was locked down and locked in, and governments had to increase the supply of money in order to to absorb some of the shock of the recession. And if we had Bitcoin at the time, the shock of the recession would be 10 times what it was. So Bitcoin and any of those cryptocurrencies cannot become currencies and should not become currencies. However, I am a very strong believer that our central banks should use blockchain in order to create a digital version of our currency, because that will allow us to democratize our state money. So I'm totally against private cryptocurrencies. cryptocurrencies that are apolitical. Strongly believe that money must be political. If it's not political, it fails its purpose. It must be democratized using the blockchain technology of Ether, of Bitcoin, but it cannot be left to the private sector, to the free market of crypto. That will always end up as a scam. And let's not forget that, if you take Bitcoin, there is a Bitcoin aristocracy. The people who had lots of Bitcoins at the beginning today hold the vast majority of Bitcoins. So it is by nature oligarchic when it is not public. So I believe in public money, in a state-run money, which is democratized using blockchain.
Es interesante lo que dice en un contexto en el cual nosotros, claro, estamos enfrascados en un escándalo internacional con criptomonedas. Claro, él se refiere a lo teórico, pero sobre lo práctico, sobre ese escándalo, también opinó y dijo lo siguiente.
And what about scams and the crypto space? Because in the crypto community, there was lots of fans of Milei and fans of deregulation and fans of decentralization and enemies of the state. But at the same time, that deregulation prevails the state from helping these people to not be scammed. I mean, they were scammed, the victims of this fraud, this Milei crypto fraud, they were scammed by the men they worshipped. What do you find in that contradiction, and what do you think it will have as outcome? Will they change their mind? Should they think about this politically? What do you think?
Well, when crypto started with Bitcoin at the end of 2008, beginning of 2009, it attracted both progressives, left-wingers, and liberals, neoliberals, because it did have an emancipatory, liberationist dimension to it. The idea that, and it is a very powerful idea, the idea that unlike MasterCard or Visa or the Bank of America or the Citibank, here is a peer-to-peer system. Nobody controls the ledger. Every participant is contributing to the upkeep of the ledger of who owns what, and every single user of Bitcoin is contributing to the registration of every transaction. And in the end, everybody is benefiting from a communal exercise. Sounds really socialistic, and also free and liberal. Of course, until you realize that this whole system turns towards an oligarchy and the aristocracy of Bitcoin, as I said before. Gradually, the progressives realized that and left the scene. And so did the genuine libertarians. And the ones who were left in this crypto community were the ones who, using the ideology of libertarianism, they were simply in the business of scamming the rest. And they turned it into a pyramid scheme. They used the theological, religious, libertarian language in order to bring people in, because that's how pyramid schemes work. As long as you bring new people in, the suckers, the ones who are already in, who have a first mover advantage, are the ones who benefit, who amass value. And the whole trick is to get out before the whole thing collapses. And, Milei proved in no uncertain terms that this is exactly what it's all about. What is spectacular and utterly criminal is that he did it using his status as the president of a very important country.
Insisto, no es muy buena la opinión que tiene Varoufakis sobre Milei, pero ¿querés más? En este último fragmento va a haber una evaluación más general del exministro de Economía griego, que enfrentó el ajuste de la Troika, sobre nuestro presidente. Con esto nos despedimos. Después de Varoufakis cierra el programa el spot de mayonesa, pero atentos porque vamos a compartir la versión completa seguramente en mi canal de YouTube, en el canal de Alejandro Berkovich, lo encuentran así, con algunos fragmentos más que no nos llegaron a entrar hoy y que es piola compartir de un tipo como tan reflexivo. Yanis Varoufakis y el último fragmento, y nos reencontramos el lunes que viene a las 23 horas.
Milei is an interesting phenomenon in the sense that he's a manufactured, self-propelled contradiction. On the one hand, he's waxing lyrical about the market and about liberty and about the market that happens to be free and therefore liberates us and helps us become rich and prosperous. But at the very same time, when you look at his policies are absolutely, utterly illiberal, utterly oligarchic, utterly in favor of the concentration of power that his gurus, supposedly people like Adam Smith and von Hayek, who waxed lyrical about decentralization, about nobody having any power over anybody else, would disdain. So, in other words, Milei is a professional hypocrite who uses the language of neoliberalism, of libertarianism, in order to put forward a quasi-fascist, populist argument in favor of a very staunch oligarchy. Now, that is not at all in contradiction with his worshipping of Elon Musk and Donald Trump, because that's what they are doing in the United States. Mm. That is the whole point. However, he's looking up to these people, particularly Elon Musk, and lacks the foundation for even being compared to him. Because whatever you may think of Elon Musk, he has, though he's a staunch misogynist, racist, a poor excuse for human nature, nevertheless, he's actually produced things. He's created, Tesla that made some good cars, made battery-propelled cars desirable. That's not to be scoffed at. He created Neuralink, which, at least in principle, the fact that you can have a quadriplegic person who has no capacity to move anything, with his or her mind moving objects, now that's a great accomplishment for the human spirit.
Yes.
Even SpaceX, he's managed to do things in space that NASA or the Soviet Union in the years past never managed to achieve. But Milei is one of those global South pretenders who combines, on the one hand, extremely fascistic authoritarianism with a language of libertarianism or liberalism that is a form of toxic populism disguised as liberalism. And when it comes to his actual policies, when you look at his macroeconomic policies, the harsh austerity which he's imposing on Argentina, we have had it already in my country. What he's doing is what the troika of lenders in the case of Greece after 2010 imposed upon us almost with an iron fist. Not almost, with an iron fist. They even closed down our banks from abroad in order to blackmail the Greek people, in order to accept this harsh austerity. From their perspective, it works. Because if your objective is to balance the books of the government, you can do it. Technically, it's really straightforward. I mean, you can use a nuclear bomb, you nuke the place, and then there is no deficit.
Yes.